All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final concurrent session of the day, implementing Hawk's Foundations of English into the classroom. Our presenter today is Michael Thompson. Michael currently serves as a developmental reading and writing instructor for interim reading and writing, developmental reading and writing instructor and interim developmental reading and writing coordinator at North Iowa Area Community College. If you have any questions for the presenter during our session, please submit those in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will be able to address all those questions at the end of the talk. And on that note, I will go ahead and hand it over to our presenter.
Thank you. Everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
All right. If anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to go ahead and just type in the. You can interrupt me. You don't have to wait till the end if you would prefer to ask during the presentation. So thank you, Shriver. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. So that's not going to work. Let me see here. Pardon me there. How am I doing? Can everybody see my, did that work?
It's not shared currently.
Okay. All right. Let me see here. Let me try something real quick here. I think I was backwards. Okay. How's that looking?
Yep, we can see the PowerPoint right now. It's just in the normal view. So
okay. Is that better right there? Or
that is the presenter view right there.
I apologize, everybody.
You're fine.
Let me see here. Gosh darn it. What do I want to do? I want to go. Is that any better if I press? Let's see. Is that, I'm still in the presenter mode, aren't I?
Oh, that's it right here. You've got it up right now.
I'm good to go now?
Good to go now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, today I'm going to be presenting about how NIAC, North Iowa Area Community College in Mason City, Iowa, went about implementing the Foundations of English program into our classroom. And so I'm just going to be talking about what we did and some things that we found out. I think that this will be beneficial to anyone that's considering implementing foundations into your classroom. There's some things that we did that were successful and some things we learned along the way as well. So hopefully this will be of good use to you. Our goals for today, we're gonna talk about some strategies that we used when we developed or we implemented the program. We're gonna talk about some feedback that we gathered from both our students as well as our faculty that taught the program. And then we did collect some student data samples over the years that I think you might find interesting. So those are our objectives today. We piloted this program back in 2015 and 2016. It was a 2-year process, and NIAC's not very big. We have roughly 2,000 to 3,000 students max. We're down enrollment right now due to the pandemic. So we're lower. Back then we were probably around 3,200 students total. So our developmental reading program, we did not have, we don't have huge numbers, but I do believe that if you do have big numbers in your program, what we did is rather scalable, can work for your system. So, we implemented it and it was a 1 semester hour developmental ed credit. Students met twice a week for 1 hour. And this data comes from roughly 75 students. And if you're not familiar with Foundations of English, if you haven't looked at it yet, there are 8 modules, and this was just a developmental reading course. We do teach a developmental writing course that we use Hawks a little bit with, This presentation will primarily focus on our reading program. So the students completed the first 3 modules because in Foundations, the first 3 modules or chapters focus on reading. So just if you're curious why we chose Hawks, we were with another company that I'm not going to mention, but we were not very pleased with customer support, and we knew that Hawks had an excellent reputation with the math department, and our math folks were very pleased. Our dev ed math folks were very, very pleased with Hawks, and we had heard that they were coming out with a developmental English program. So we approached Hawks. We actually called them up and asked if we could, if they were going to be releasing the program soon, and then they asked if we would like to pilot it. And so we worked that out with our students. So we actually saw the software develop over the first 2 years in its beta phase before it was released for officially released. So that was kind of interesting to see how that developed, but that's how I came to be with Hawks. So like I said, students would meet twice a week for an hour, and they'd spend about an hour outside of class as well. There's roughly, I would say, 20, probably 27, 28 sections in those modules, 3 modules, and there's 7 to 9 sections, I think, per module. So we basically assign 2 sections per week, roughly, is how we go about structuring the class. And we leave some time in for pre and the formative and summative assessments before units and after, and things like that. But it worked out pretty well for us to assign 2 sections per week. So, and like I said, the students completed the first 3 modules, and we set it up as competency based, and so students had to pass each section with 80% or better. And so if they didn't pass it, then they would get 2 chances, and if they still were struggling, then we would meet with the students and remediate with them and work with them. And so, but the 80% mastery was required for them to move on from each lesson. So that was our target. Just so you understand the physical room setup, if you're wondering how that looked, this is a panoramic, kind of a weird picture here, but it's a panoramic picture of our classroom, and we have computers that went all around the edges with the monitors facing in. And if you're wondering how to set up, I would recommend doing this because it saves a lot of time trying to walk through rows to see behind students' computers and trying to see, make sure that they're online doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if you can set up your room this way, I would recommend it. We also obviously have the tables in the middle here, and that was for when we would remediate, or we would sometimes ask reflection questions and things of that nature. And so we did have a space where we could work in the middle as well, but that was a pretty good physical layout. It's hard to tell from the picture here, but if you look to the left, that's the teacher station. You can barely see it. And then there was a projector up above the room. So we projected modules, especially in the beginning. We went through the first module kind of together with the students, and we would project that. So that was helpful for them to understand how the program worked and whatnot. So we also, in that setting, we also encourage students to bring their own devices. I'm a big believer that, our computers aren't the fastest, most up to date. They're not bad, but they're not super computers. So we always allowed for students to bring in their own devices. as you can see here. And surprisingly enough, some students, I wouldn't want to do it, but some students were comfortable working on tablets and a few even on phones. And I know I teach some other classes, and I know like some of my Canvas quizzes, students prefer to use their phones. They have access to computers in the room, and they'd rather just use their phones. So that was something, like I said, I would never do that, but we saw a lot of that. So that was one thing that students definitely they prefer if they have the opportunity to use their own devices. So that's just kind of a little rough overview of the pilot, the points I wanted to make there. I'm going to talk here a little bit. I'm going to bring up 3 points, and that's the faculty, the instructors, and the competency based. And I'm going to share some feedback here with you, both from our students and instructors. So we had at the time, I think we had 5 instructors that could teach our remedial reading program, which is, it's called Power Reading. If I call it that, that's what I'm talking about. And we had 5 instructors, but we decided to start with 3 just because when we piloted, we thought it would be better to keep the group small so that we could just work out the kinks and get a system down and make revisions before we spread to more instructors. So that was something that we deliberately chose to do, is to keep the group small in the beginning before we got comfortable. The competency base, like I said, initially when we set it up, it still kind of runs this way. Students, they need to get 2 lessons done a week or show in good faith that they're trying. So, competency based, I guess my favorite way I've heard it put is that the time is no longer, or the objective is no longer the variable. The time is now the variable. So we set up a pacing schedule where we expected students to do at least 2 lessons a week, or show in good faith, that they had spent time working if they were struggling. But they could work ahead as well, and that is a huge motivator for some students that want to work ahead. Honestly, in the spring, it's a good motivator. I always use the line with my students. It's easier. I'm in Iowa, so it's easier to do work in January and February and March than it is in April and May when it gets nice out. So we use that to our advantage, and obviously students that finished sooner usually did better in the course. So that was a motivator for students, it was nice too, because some of our students were done early, so our loads as instructors were diminished by the end of the semester. We could focus more time with the students that were struggling and needed more support, because several students had already finished. So that was nice. If students could not complete 2 modules per week, and it was very rare, we would just work out individual plans with those students. And try to come up with ways that they could they could meet those requirements. Sometimes we offer free tutoring at NIAC, so sometimes we would suggest or set them up with a tutor for additional support, or schedule office time where they could come in and get help or whatnot. Honestly, the bulk of our students did pretty well getting 2 modules done per week. That was pretty reasonable, I thought. So we didn't see too much of that. And some feedback that we gathered. We throughout the whole course, and I'll share some specific feedback coming up here in a little bit, but we just found that it was very important as we were implementing this program. Before we started, we decided that we would talk to our students once a month, just for like 10 minutes during class, and ask them how it was going. We wanted their input of the program. because we were trying it out. We didn't, we weren't necessarily committed. We were just, seeing if we liked it. And a big part of that was getting student feedback. So we planned that in. We made a decision to be proactive and set up, just roughly 10 minutes once a month where we would talk to students, and we asked them all sorts of questions like, how do you like the program? How do you like the work? You feel it's challenging? Are you learning? Are you comfortable with it? We also asked them how the customer support was, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. Everything that we wanted to know, we brainstormed ahead of time, and we made sure that we asked students those things continuously throughout the semester. And we did the same thing with ourselves as instructors. We set aside time to just basically discuss, do we like this program? Is it meeting our needs? What questions do we have? Things of that nature. And I'll share some results of that feedback coming up. But my point is that if you're going to try out the program, I think you'll find it very beneficial to plan plan the ways that you're going to monitor feedback ahead of time. So that's just a little bit, 3 points that I wanted to make there about the course implementation. Going to move on, and here's some results of the feedback that I wanted to share regarding what we found out from our students. So the first thing that we found out was that students found Hawks very easy to work with. They continually said that. They said that once they made it through the first module, it was pretty easy to figure out. And so that was pretty nice. Quite honestly, the biggest challenge, now that I've taught this for several years, the biggest challenge is the first day, getting them to sign up for getting them to, because they buy an access code or they can buy it online. And getting them registered in the course is the biggest challenge. Outside of that, like I had mentioned, we worked through the first module together. Quasi, I didn't answer questions with them, but I led them through the first module, and it was smooth sailing for the most part. So students really appreciated that, which we like, because we don't want our students battling software. We want something that's rather intuitive and easy to follow, and the Foundations program is certainly set up very well for that. So students appreciated it. We appreciated that students appreciated it, and it worked out well. So this screen here, if you maybe you've looked at the program, or if you don't, I encourage you to check out this screen. Have a Hawks rep show it to you, because this is very important for students. It's their menu screen, and as long as you're setting up your assignments with dates, which isn't hard to do, it will automatically set up your to-do dates for the students, so they know right away what's coming up. And in my case, it looks like I have 20 lessons that are overdue, so I'm going to be up late tonight getting some work done. But students really appreciated this, and it's very accessible. It's easy to find. It's right there for them, and really well put together. So that's huge to help keep students organized, because we're talking about developmental students. And part of the problem is organizational skills sometimes. So this was great, both from faculty and students. And then they also appreciated the days that go in months and lists. One thing that we found, that students, if we put in all our dates ahead of time, we set up the course. So on day one, when they opened it up, they saw the due dates. They liked getting ahead, because then they could see where the pace was supposed to be, and where they were at. And that was kind of a nice motivator for them. They'd be like, oh, I'm 4 weeks ahead. And then we'd reinforce that and say, well, yeah, you can be 4 weeks done if you keep pace, or you can even get done sooner. And that was very beneficial. So this is a nice screen. Again, I do live in Iowa, and once in a while we get some snow. So we have had snow days. And when that happens, it's very easy to shift dates. You can shift them all at once. So if you're curious about, do I set up all my dates in the beginning? What happens if something gets delayed? It's very easy to shift them all to other dates. Just a couple clicks. So if you're going to do it, I would recommend putting the due dates in ahead of time. Because I don't know, it sets the expectation for students. It gives them the pace to work at. And then, like I said, if they get ahead, it becomes kind of motivational for them to stay ahead or get ahead even further. So that was some feedback that we had from students. One other thing that I wanted to mention that's not up on the screen here is that when we do have them sign up the first day, I will encourage them to, if they're struggling, I'll help them a bit, but sometimes I'll have 7 students in my class, and again, we're small, you might have 20. But what I've found in later years of doing this is that I will have them just call Hawks right away, because Hawks has excellent customer service. I'm going to get into that in a few minutes here. But if I would have them just call Hawks the first day, then they would know how to do that. So I found that to be something else that was really good for our students was the customer service. And again, having them call right away if they're struggling to set up their account kind of breaks the ice for them for when they might need help down the road. So in terms of the content of the program of Foundations of English, we did some surveying, and I'm going to talk about their favorite lessons and the not so favorite lessons. The big ones that students really appreciated were the active learning styles. And that's 1.1 and 1.2. So right off the bat, they're introduced to learning styles. And I think most students are approached with this in their K-12 years. But I think Hawks takes it to a little deeper level that's more college appropriate. It's a good time to get to know our students. When we ask them about their learning styles, there's some reflection questions that Hawks offers. Otherwise, we have some discussions about it and whatnot too. And it's really good way to get to know the students and get to know what their preferred way of learning is. And it shows that we care about them and want to get to know them and want to help them. So it just lends itself to a nice start for the course. I have an example here of a music student. We were lucky enough, we're a smaller school, so we could work with certain students, and that was one thing that was beneficial. We had kind of a history buff, so students that were in history classes, we have a pretty tough history class for students here at NIAC. She worked with those students. I like music. I'm an amateur musician, I guess, and so I helped out a music student, and we would take things that they were learning in Hawks in the Foundations program and help them apply that to their other classes. We were able to pair up, our strengths with our students, taking those classes. So that worked out really well. Another module that they'll really like, that they'll probably find very helpful, is 1.8, and that's reducing test anxiety. And quite honestly, in the later years that I taught this, I would bring that up to students. I'd say, in a few weeks, we're gonna study how to take tests. So keep coming back, because this will help you. And they really appreciated that one. And gain some very important relevant knowledge for college with that. And the other one was reading actively and purposely, which I think is a great lesson. And I think that's tough for a lot of our developmental readers, is to focus when they're reading and things of that nature. So they appreciated that module when they got to that. So those were some favorites. Those are the hits, I guess you could call them. We also have a not so favorite lesson, and I'll kind of show you some data on this in a little bit. And this is argumentation strategies, Pathos, Ethos, Logos. This was by far the least favorite. Now, I will say that I think it's a really good lesson and very interesting, and I think it certainly helps them in our Comp 2 class, because they have to write an argumentative paper, a research paper with a research question and argue and whatnot. And so I felt like this was very beneficial. And when they were done with it, I think they appreciated it, but they did not like going through it. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a couple of minutes coming up, how we dealt with that. But just because it was a not so favorite, please understand it's not a bad lesson. It's a very good lesson. It's just very challenging for them. It's a challenge. And I'll show you, I'll give you some data that reflects that. So those are some favorite lessons. If you're thinking about implementing the program, I really challenge you, those first couple lessons, the learning styles, really milk that for what it's worth, and get to know your students, and let your students know that you're getting to know them, that you care about them in those first couple lessons. Maybe share your own learning styles or preferences with them, and what works for you, and it's a great time to get off on the right foot. So faculty, this was what we've this is what we've collected in terms of our feedback over these last few years of Hawks, is that first of all, it's very common sense. I have a couple, I have 4 part-time faculty right now. I've had 5 in the past. And honestly, our part-time faculty that teach DevEd, we find very good luck with retired school teachers. And so I have a couple of retired teachers that are not very keen on with technology. They're not, they do email, and that's about it, and Microsoft Word. Those, they're not into Google or any of that stuff really. And yet they find this, they're pretty comfortable with this. So I see I have a question here. Okay, so Christine says, I completely agree about the lessons on learning styles in previous semesters. I was implementing my own lesson plans and was really excited to see this in a textbook. Yes. It's very cool. It's very cool. And there's a lot of good surveys out there too, and videos and additional information too. You can really make it fun and interesting for them. So thank you, Christine. So so we find that the program is very simple to use, and I think Hawks, I actually have sat in a couple meetings where they've picked our brains about, what do you think if we do this or that, and I really think Hawks goes out of their way to make it simple and help people be confident with the program. So even faculty that struggle with technology did pretty well. Another thing that's nice about the program, I kind of alluded to this, but students can work at their own individual pace. And that's supported by the software. You can set it up so that students that want to work ahead can work ahead. You don't have to, but you certainly can. And like I said, it's a great motivator. Students, I don't know, when it's kind of a way to empower them. I think when students feel empowered, that they tend to try harder and they tend to do better. And so letting them know that they can work at their own pace, it's just another plus to the program. I think it helps some do better and finish earlier. So it's very easy to do with the Hawks software, very easy to let that happen. Customer service, much better than other programs that we had. And that was our initial reason why we switched to Hawks, is because we had heard, it was hearsay that Hawks was great. But we quickly found out that Hawks goes above and beyond. So the morning that I first started this, initiated the first day of class, I had emails in my inbox at the start of the day, and I received a phone call as well, checking in to make sure that everything was going okay. And so right away, I was very pleased. And Hawks reps do a great job of checking in on us. I know Math talks to our rep frequently. I hear from our rep frequently. I really have a lot of faith that if I have any problems or need any help, that Hawks will truly work in in good faith and their best effort to help me out. So very, very good with customer service. They also have, I hear it's impossible for the phone to ring more than 3 times is what I hear. Is that it's impossible, and there's always somebody live there. It's not automated. So if you or a student needs to call, they give you the number, and you'll get a person that will talk to you and will work you through the program. You don't have to dial any, punch in any, menus or any of that stuff, or if you're like me, like they ask you those questions, you have to say yes or no, and I get pretty snarky in the phone, when the machine's asking and stuff. None of that stuff. So they do a great job. Another thing that I felt that I really like about Hawks, and Hawks made it a point to let us know this, but in terms of the reading, the previous program that we were using, their readings were interesting, but they were kind of all over the place. One was even about how to brew beer, which was kind of weird for 19, 20-year-olds. Not that I don't like beer, but it's just, I didn't know if that was very appropriate for college, younger college students. But anyway, the Hawks topics are very relevant to college life. So, like I talked about the test anxiety or learning styles, the texts that they're reading pertain to their life as it is, being a college student. And I really appreciate that, because I'm a firm believer that the best motivator is relevancy. I think if a student looks at something and says, oh, I can use this, this is relevant, that they're much more likely to accept the challenge and work towards it. I think that the more relevant something is, the more rigorous it can be, because students see the value in it. And I definitely see that in this program. So that was something that we noticed as well, was that topics are much more relevant to student life than the other programs that we had tried. So the one thing that, and I don't think there's an easy way around this. There are going to be some students that just, they show up to class and they think, well, that's what I learned today, and they leave and they don't take it with them. For example, the learning styles. We needed to help students understand that they could go to psychology class and apply those skills. that they were learning about. That's the whole point of a developmental reading course, is to help them in their college reading. And students, sometimes it's just like they show up and they, what they learn in the classroom stays in the classroom. So we really had to challenge them. We would have discussions. We'd be proactive, and for example, I might say, I want you guys to come back next week and we're going to discuss how you use a strategy in another class. So that's, that was an informal assignment. And so they'd come back and they'd say, oh, I tried this in psychology or whatnot. And so students, they can put 2 and 2 together and realize that it helps in other classes, but typically with our dev ed students, they kind of need some help with that. There are really good reflection questions in Hawks that can help with that discussion. But that's one thing to not shy away from, is really helping them see the benefit of, this isn't just taking a class to improve reading. You can apply these to your other skills or other classes right away and build your skills, and it's going to help you with school. So another thing that we really liked with Hawks, we didn't do this in the pilot, but we started doing it later on, and I'll have some data for you. But we started doing formative and summative assessment to see how students, where their weaknesses were before we started a unit or a module. And we also would test them afterwards to see the growth. And I've got some information coming up here, but we really could use the Hawks assessment to help students individually. Another way that we use Hawks, and we don't do it as much because we have a co-rec developmental writing class that goes along with our comp classes, and we don't really use Hawks in that class, but we do have a standalone developmental class for writing. And we will we'll have a student write an essay, and then we'll assess that essay and we'll find problems, and then we'll assign certain portions of the Hawks writing program individually. So maybe one student studies with sentence fragments and another one studies with paragraph development. If we see that in their writing, we can assign individually each student what they need to work on. So that's really, really handy, because I think, at the college level, that, in dev ed, reading or writing, there's gaps that, not all students are the same. They're so far along that they're all different in their needs. And you can really hone in on each student with the program. And you don't have to assign everybody the same lesson. Really nice. So that's some of our opinions that we gathered as faculty when we use the programs and things that we found out. So this is a little bit of data. This was tracked back in 2019. Quite honestly, our numbers are down, and so I have a colleague that refers to it refers to it as BC, before COVID. So this was BC, right? Before COVID. And we just have not had enough numbers to be reliable. So the data is a little bit dated, but it is what it is in this crazy time that we're living. But I'm going to talk a little bit about some data that I think you'll find very interesting. So like I said, students had to pass each lesson at 80%. That was non-negotiable. And they would just have to do it until they got it right. And after 2 times, we set up the computer so that after 2 times it would lock them, and then they'd have to come to us for help. So that was nice. We didn't have to monitor, we knew they'd say, hey, I locked out my lesson, I need help, and we'd help them. But We did track, so like I said, the objective was no longer the variable, the time was. Well, here it is, you're looking at it here. By lesson, I found this was very interesting. We added up, and as you can see, 3.2, the argumentation strategies was the big one, and we were looking at it typically took students a couple of hours working on that when we track this data. And you can see that there were some lessons that like managing your time effectively. They must have managed their time effectively for that lesson because it didn't take long. So I thought this was a very interesting chart. This is like our first 75 students or so. What we did then with, like, for example, the argumentation strategies, we just knew that it was going to be a bear for students. We knew it. So about a month before they were scheduled to start that lesson, we started giving what we called mini lessons. And we introduced argumentation strategies and Pathos, Ethos, Logos, and we worked, and every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes at the beginning of class, we just started teaching about it ahead of time. And unfortunately, I don't have enough numbers to see how effective that was, because like I said, then COVID hit and we just don't have numbers, but it did seem to help. I don't have exact numbers, but it did seem to help prepare them. So I have a comment here. I have a question here from Christine. Did you use the guided notes as part of your lessons or rely completely on the courseware to reinforce the lesson material? A little bit of both. If I remember correctly, the guided notes did not come out in the first couple of years. I think that they came out a little bit later on. And so we did start using them, but not the first couple of years. So that it'd be about half and half for this data, as best as I can remember, because we're back in 15. So yeah, probably not much of the guided notes, because I don't remember when the guided notes came out exactly, but I don't believe they came out. I know they didn't come out with the pilot, with the beta version that we tried. So there weren't any guided notes. So I'm thinking, Christine makes a great point here, in that I'm thinking that if we had the same amount of students and we tested them again using the guided notes, we might see some of these higher lessons, these higher timed lessons maybe come down a bit. The other thing to keep in mind too with this chart is 1.1. I'm thinking students probably could have got through that faster, but we led them through it. So we took our jolly time. So that's probably a little bit inflated. I found that chart interesting, just to know. And we, by the way, we shared this with our students too at the beginning of the year. We would once we gathered it, we'd say, hey, this is what it looks like, and we would not be around the bush. We'd tell them, 3.2, we got to work ahead. We got to get prepared for 3.2. And so students found this chart very interesting. Some of them like to compete against it, which, as long as they're doing well, I don't care, but yeah. So this was, we used the web tests. We created our own from the bank, and these are the first 3 modules, and you can see some growth there. From over here is the first one, second one, third one, as you can see, pretty self-explanatory, but we did see growth from the formative to the summative assessments as well. And later on, if a student was able to test out of certain sections, we decided to let them, and they'd have to pass. We'd give, okay, so for example, module 1 has like 8 or 9 sections to it. So we would give a formative assessment covering all 9 of those modules, 5 questions per each section, not module section, sections within the module. We would have 5 questions regarding each section in the module. So you'd have like 45 questions or something. If a student aced out of, for example, all the questions on 1.3, then we would cross that off the student's list if they aced the pretest, if they aced the formative assessment. So we started doing that after a while. And so that was something that we changed around, where we would excuse them. That helped in two ways. First of all, we felt like if they could ace the 5 questions, that chances are they probably understood it pretty well. And the second thing that helped was it gave us better formative assessment numbers. Obviously, because we told them you can pass out of this module, or you can pass out of parts of this module. And so they tried hard. A lot of times, sometimes students, if it's a formative assessment, it doesn't count, they don't care. But they suddenly cared when they found out they could test out. So we would have them come in before we started a module and just take a day and take an hour, and they test, give a formative, and then we'd work through the modules, and then they'd have to come in and take the summative. So that's how we gathered this data. So those are our average gains that we saw in points, percentage points there for the modules. So pretty good. And what's really exciting there to me is that if you've worked with a program or haven't, I feel that the third module of the 3 is by far the most difficult. And that's where we saw the biggest gain. So I think that's pretty encouraging to see the biggest gain here at the for the hardest modules. So that's just a couple of points that I wanted to make regarding some data that we've collected. Again, a little bit dated, but still pretty good stuff. So that's what I have for you today. So hopefully, and open up for questions here in a minute, but hopefully if you're thinking about using the program, I recommend you do. I recommend you give it a whirl. We're very pleased with it for many reasons. Hopefully you have some ideas that I've discussed here about implementing some things that you can do. I always get the question, how many students do you have per class? Quite honestly, we try to keep, and usually people don't, they kind of freak out about this. We try to keep our numbers to, in our co-rec writing, we try to keep it to 6-to-1 ratio. And everybody's like, how do you do that? I don't know. Our division chair makes it happen. So she's awesome. So somehow we do that. And I realize that a lot of schools have 10, 12 students to 1. I don't know, we just haven't made there. But in terms of our reading classes, where mainly I was talking about here, our ratio was anywhere from, we might have 2 students in a class up to, I think I had 14 one semester. So I kind of average, but we do have smaller classes. But like I said, I think it's still scalable. And then hopefully you got some good information about the feedback that we collected both from our students and faculty. And I hope the data kind of helped you out as well. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick and just mention we're right about our time, but we do have a couple minutes to work with. So I'm going to give it a second to see if anybody has any questions, just to make sure those can be answered. So we'll just give it a few seconds here, see if anybody has anything they wanted to ask before it ends here. Oh, looks like Christine posted one in here. They said this is the first semester that they're using Hawks Foundations, and they've been quite pleased so far. They said they're still learning so much about all the capabilities, and thank you for all of your information. So that was really nice of you to say that, Christine.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. I hope you're enjoying it, and hope it keeps going well for you. So.
And then Dr. Kazi said, we were wondering, was there instructor input or was it only the online courseware?
Was there instructor? We left that up to each instructor. So some instructors, we had one that brought in a lot of her own stuff additionally. And then another one that stayed pretty close to the courseware. I was kind of in the middle. I guess my philosophy as the director, everybody's kind of got their own teaching style. I try not to mess with that. It was kind of all over the board, quite honestly. Now we have had discussions about remediation, how to help students, some specific strategies and whatnot to implement. But honestly, it was I kind of left that up to each instructor. How do you want to teach your classroom, and if you want to bring in extra materials or whatnot.
Awesome. All right, though. So we are right up on our time now. So do want to say a quick thank you to everyone who's attended this and all the other meetings that you attended today, and a big shout out and thank you to Michael for all the valuable information that you shared with us today. So I'm actually going to paste a brief survey in the chat right now. So y'all should see that in there. So this is just a brief survey on your overall experience at IES today. We would love if you would be able to take a minute to give us your feedback. We would really just appreciate that. So now a couple of little things. This was the last of the concurrent sessions for the day, but we do have a couple other things outside of the sessions that are going on. So for the last hour of the day today, we'll be doing something a little bit different. So for all the animal lovers out there, you can join our friends at the Goat to Meeting meeting for a virtual tour of the Sweet Farm Sanctuary to meet the rescue goats and other animals that they have under their care. I will be hosting that one as well. So I encourage everyone who's still in here to hop over there. I'm really excited to see that. So, but also if you prefer to stretch your mind, you can go test your knowledge with virtual teams trivia. That's going to be available as well. So these events are all going to start right at 5 p.m. Eastern time today. And I'll be posting in the chat in just 1 second, all the links. So you'll be able to look at those meeting links to access those, or the conference website to see a full list of all of the concurrent sessions that I'll be running tomorrow with their descriptions. Now, also for tomorrow, we will continue tomorrow with IES at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll start with a virtual tour of the Theban Desert. So if you'd like to get an early start, you can join us for a stretch during our 9:30 a.m. chair yoga session, hop in and see the desert afterwards. So more details and the full Friday schedule can be found on the conference website. Also, while accessing the conference website, please do not forget to stop by the virtual booth to say hello to everyone on the Hawks team. You can view a quick 5-minute demonstration and be entered to win one of our daily or our hourly giveaway prizes. And those are going to be your choice of a 6-month Audible subscription, a 1-year subscription to Disney Plus, or a $100 Amazon gift card. So 5 minutes of your time to have a chance to win one of those prizes is definitely worth it. So I'll say thank you to everyone who's attended, and thank you to all of our presenters who have been presenting today on the first day of IES this year. We hope to see you all at one of our next events today and also tomorrow as well at our other events. So I'll be posting all those links into the chat here. So you should see those in there now. And I'll have the meeting room open for just another minute before we hop over and go see the goats in the Goat to Meeting.